The rabble among them had a strong craving, and God's people also wept again. And they said, "If only we had meat to eat." When we remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt, for nothing but the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic we remember. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. Here in Numbers chapter 11, verses 4 to 5, God's people unexpectedly erupt into complaint. Here in the desert, after God's people had been rescued by God from Egypt, protected against the threats inside and outside their beloved community, after God had offered subsistence and safety in the hostility of the desert, God's people unexpectedly erupt into complaint. Some teachers and preachers focus on the theme of trust and faithfulness when studying this section in Scripture. I do not think this is an incorrect lens through which to view this holy text. With that said, there is another perspective to view this section in Numbers. This portion in our Holy Scriptures reveals the evolution of memory in the midst of crisis and moments of change, while also challenging us, as the readers, to contemplate how accurate our memory is currently in our time. Here, in the midst of a radical change in God's people's lives, God's people begin to unexpectedly complain. And it is not just that they complain, it's what they say they remember, which calls us, as the readers, to ponder. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt, for nothing the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and also the garlic that we remember. I was not present in the time when God's people were oppressed by others who once were their neighbors when Joseph was alive. I was not there in Egypt when God's people suffered injustice and abuse. But what I have read in Scripture does not reveal many moments that witness God's people eating meals of melons, leeks, and cucumbers. We are able to interpret Scripture and come to different conclusions. And from my study, I do not read of moments when God's people had a surplus of food in Egypt, which they claim to remember here in the desert. If God's people truly experienced such meals in their days of suffering, or if they did not, we as students of the Bible find ourselves challenged by Scripture as we contemplate how accurate our own memory is as we continue to grow in our own journey of faith. In these unique and historic days of extreme social distancing, limitations, and surplus of time offer us all the opportunity to reflect on our lives before this global pandemic. And in our time of reflection, we may be tempted to romanticize about the reality of personal and social life prior to our global health crisis. Though there were many blessings present prior to social distancing, and though there were moments of excitement as plans were made, there were also great suffering before our current days of crisis. Before our global health crisis, in our conversations together with you, my beloved people, we spoke about the instability of our national and local politics. We had painfully hard conversations about the direction of the Methodist Church as a denomination, and we trusted each other with personal heartache and individual suffering. Though there were many blessings present in our lives prior to extreme social distancing, our current limitations and surplus of time can tempt us to forget about the struggles of several weeks ago. I say this not to eliminate our hope, which is so often linked with memory, and I do not share these words with you, my beloved people, to curb our moments of reflection, but rather I invite you, in humility, to have the courage to remember life as it was, so that we can use this time as a gift to plan various options and potential solutions. The challenges we will face once again stem from our past. We must come to the realization that we will be tasked, each one of us, to rebuild our societies and our beloved communities. We will return from social distancing to discover this devastating extent of loss. The loss of our beloved people, their livelihoods, plans, and prosperity. And when the time comes, when we emerge from social distancing to rebuild, if we say to one another and to ourselves, "Let us rebuild as we remember life once was," then we risk rebuilding our future with the blueprints of a romanticized past, ornating our future with fool's gold. But if, in this time of social distancing, we come to the realization that we are to first honor our people who have died, and then drastically care for our heroes who are caring for us now, once the time comes when we begin the hard work of rebuilding our beloved communities, let us build a world with justice and mercy as our foundation of every single plan that we make, where inclusion and compassion set the diameters of our building projects, and where empathy and compassion becomes the mortar by which we begin to build, and where love, universal love, is used as our framework for every action that we take. Though this, in itself, may seem like a romanticized vision of the future, I humbly and resolutely believe that if we use our time of social distancing to soberly evaluate our past and spend time planning solutions, then a world we dream of in the most intimate moments of our lives may actually be built in our own lifetime. I love you, I miss you, and I look forward to building our future together in love.